Asato ma satkamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityorma amritam gamaya, avirāvirmayeti, rudrayatte dakshinam mukham, tena mam pahi nityam. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the Divine Consciousness fill our hearts and protect us. We begin today on verse number 4. Yada hi nendriyartheshu na karmasvanusajjate sarvasankalpa sannyasi yoga rudhastadochyate. When there is attachment neither to the senses nor to work, the person who has renounced all desires is said to have attained fitness for yoga. So this verse and some of the subsequent verses now will deal with about fitness for yoga. In the earlier verses of this chapter, the first 3 verses, we saw the term yoga rudha, one who wants fitness for yoga and one who has attained fitness for yoga. So these 3 terms come fairly frequently in the Gita. There is the word, of course, yoga. Each chapter itself is called a yoga. Then there is the term yogi. Then there is sannyasa and sannyasi. And then there is the term muni. Now, it might seem as if this is some technical terms, that who is a yogi, who is a sannyasi, who is a muni. But if you go to the meaning of each word, primarily it refers to all sincere spiritual seekers. Yoga is primarily a spiritual discipline, a spiritual practice. Whoever is doing their spiritual practices sincerely, regularly, with earnestness, they are already yogis. So don't hesitate to think of yourself as a yogi. Now there is a difference between a yogi who is on the way to enlightenment and a yogi who is enlightened. So all of us are yogis on the way to enlightenment. The same thing with regard to sannyasa, as the earlier verse made it clear. Sannyasa is primarily letting go of one's own ego, letting go of the idea of ownership. So long as we are able to do that internally, whether or not we are externally recognized as sannyasins by society or not, internally we are already sannyasins. And that's why in this verse it just translated as one who has renounced all desires. Sarva sankalpa sannyasi, to have attained fitness for yoga. And then there is the word muni. Now some texts, some translations, they translate the word muni as sage, because they speak about in many of these texts, sadhu and muni. But muni is if you go to the root meaning of the term, it's called mananat munihi, one who reflects, one who contemplates. So those of us who take these spiritual truths seriously, we reflect on them, we try to understand their meaning. Even if we haven't become perfect in it, the very fact that we are making an effort. So every one of us is a muni in the making, a yogi in the making, a sannyasi in the making. When we will attain perfection in them will depend on how regular, how sincere, with how much faith and dedication we carry out our practices. And so that's one thing to be kept in mind, that different translations will translate these terms in different ways, but what it primarily means an earnest spiritual seeker. So here, yadahi na indriyartheshu karmasu anushajjate, when there is attachment neither to the senses. By attachment to the senses means all the data, whether it's color, sound, taste, all these things that The senses bring us from the external world, and that's how we experience the external world. If I get attached to any of these things, by being attached doesn't mean that I should not enjoy any of those things. But attachment means if at some point I'm deprived of it, then I'm not, I miss it. Then I've become dependent on it. So addiction really is a dependence on anything outside of ourselves. And so everything can be addictive in some ways. The world can be addictive, and it's kind of already addictive. The reason we find it difficult to turn the mind inward to think about God, because what we call distractions is nothing but our attachment to the world. The senses want us to go outside. And in meditation, what we are trying to do is say, no, turn inside and look inside. And so when there is attachment neither to the senses nor to work. Now, work is important. Not being attached to work doesn't mean just lazying around. It's possible to be working all the time, but without the sense, I'm doing it. Or without any clinging to the results, being too anxious about the result of my activity. Yes, when we begin any particular work, of course we have a motive. You just don't, it's not about just doing things randomly with no reason whatsoever. There has to be focused activity. When we begin the work, we are looking for a certain result. And then we decide a certain way of doing it, a certain method, a certain process will give me that result. But once I have determined that, then you can almost let go of the result, because the result will come. It's almost like if you are driving from here to, say, New York, and you have, of course, nowadays the GPS does for you. We don't even have to think everything. But in the good old days, not too long ago, there was no GPS. So you had to kind of look at a map and then say, okay, I'm going to now first take this, Route 90, then I'm going to take this, and decide on a route. And when you decide on a route, you need to know where you are. You need to know where you want to go. Then you determine what route you are going to take. But once you have determined that, there's no need every moment to be thinking, I hope this road will take me there. I hope this road. Of course, you have decided that, then just focus on your drive, enjoy your drive. Because ultimately, if you just follow that route, it will take you to your destination. That is what is meant by not being attached to the fruits of action. Yes, you do a lot of work as best you can. Striving for excellence is a great thing. That knowledge, talent, skills that we have, to put them to best use, that's a great thing. But the idea is, I should do the best from my side, and the rest will take care of itself. And that's how there is attachment neither to the senses nor to work. The person who has renounced all desires is said to have attained fitness for yoga. What does renouncing all desires mean? This actually will come later on. So I think I'll discuss it when it comes later on. But the renunciation of desire. But I can briefly mention right now that although the texts speak about renouncing desires themselves, I mean, it's not just saying, oh, I've renounced it. And people say that and nothing changes. Renouncing, you see, it's like this. When we put a bowl of water on a burner for heating, and once the water is about to boil, then of course the bubbles are going to start coming up. You can't stop the bubbles from coming up. That's just the way things are. Similarly, if we have samskaras, and we have gazillion samskaras within us, all the thoughts and actions we have done not only in this life but in all of our millions of lives, so there are plenty of mental impressions inside. Each of these mental impressions has the ability to spring up as a desire. And just imagine, therefore, how many potential desires are there in our heart. Now, they just don't spring up randomly. It might seem to be random, but there's always some internal trigger of a memory or external trigger of seeing something. And the example I give very often is you're going for a walk and you pass by a Starbucks or a Dunkin' Donut, and then suddenly you find a desire for coffee comes in. So you have seen something outside, and that triggers this coffee samskara you have in your mind. And that comes up as a desire. Oh, let me go in and have a cup of coffee. So you cannot stop that desire because it's already there inside. And we are constantly having these internal or external triggers which will activate those samskars. So we cannot stop desires. What we have control over is not just the desires rising in the heart, but what to do with those desires. Because desires themselves are good or bad, depending on fulfillment of those desires, whether it will make me stronger or weaker. Because there are good desires. Let's say a desire when we look at, like study a chapter on, say, the 6th chapter of the Gita. It's all on yoga and meditation. And that triggers the meditation samskar inside and says, oh, I think I should meditate a little bit better than I have been doing. Now, that's a great desire. So that desire comes up. Then what would I do? Normally I would say, yes, catch hold of the desire and say, let me put it into action. So when the desire is converted into an intention, then it becomes ready for action. So that control we have, that the desires are continuously coming up like bubbles in a boiling bowl of water. But to decide which desire to convert into an intention and then into action, and which desire to just ignore, just let go, that is what we can do. And that is what is meant here. Because renounced all desires really meaning renounced any intention running after those desires. Such a person is said to have attained fitness for yoga. In the Mahabharata, in the Shanti Parva, there is one verse. It goes like this. Kama janami te moolam sankalpatvam jayase natvam sankalpayishyami tena me na bhavishyati. Which means, O desire, I know where your root lies. You arise from the intent to act. That's what I was describing just now. I shall not make such intention and you will not be able to conquer me. So suppose someone wants to, let's say, suppose someone has been eating too much sweets and that has increased the sugar content in the blood. And the doctors have said, cut down on your sweets. But there is so many sweet samskars inside. So every time you see sweets or even see a picture of a sweet, don't even have to see a real sweet, or even just see an ad, then that desire comes, oh, let me go and go to the kitchen and find if there is any sweet there. Now, if I say, I will not, even if the desire comes, I look at the desire and say, that's not good for me, and say no to it. If I don't make that sankalpa, that intention, then that desire cannot do any harm to me. The sweet samskaras can keep on coming up day and night, and I can tirelessly say, no, 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 no. And the beauty is this. Every time you say no to a desire, it gets weaker. Every time you say yes to a desire, it gets stronger. So we do have control of the good desires, the desires that make me do healthy, positive, good things, to keep on saying yes, yes, yes to them. Then they will come more frequently and will give me the impetus to keep on doing good things. If there's any weakening desires come, it's like no, 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 no. So that's where the wisdom lies. When to say yes and when to say no. If I say yes where I should say no, if I say no where I should say yes, that's a recipe for pain and suffering. And all of us have plenty of that in our lives. So it's easy to blame outside forces and circumstances for our woes and troubles. But really, according to this way of thinking, it's really in our control. If we say yes at the right time in a right way and no at the right time in a right way, we are safe. And that's what is mentioned here. Only when all attachment is given up, only then there is a stillness in the heart. There's the real peace in the heart. And only then are we ready for meditation. Remember, this is the yoga of meditation that we are studying. So, in order to even have a real meditation, there must be peace and silence in the heart. And that peace and silence cannot come if the heart is just jumping about and disturbed by all these attachments and desires. Verse 5. Uddharet atmanatmanam na atmanam avasadayet atmaiva yatmano bandhuhu atmaiva ripuratmanaha. One should lift oneself by one's own self and not drag oneself down, because the self alone is the self's friend and the self alone is the self's enemy. Lot of self in this verse. The word Atman. Now we do use the word Atman very often, and usually when we are speaking in English, as we do, we refer to the Atman as something which is different from the body and mind, the non-material part of my personality. The word Atma in Sanskrit, it's just a word. So it just means the self. It means me. And so in the Gita, just because you find the word Atma in the original verse, we should not jump to the immediate conclusion, oh, it means this spiritual self. It doesn't have to be. It means just the self. Sometimes the Atma can mean the body, sometimes it can mean the mind, depending on the context. And so, let me read this verse again. So every time you hear the word self, there is the word Atma in the original Sanskrit. So let me read the Sanskrit verse once again. Uddharet atmana atmanam na atmanam avasadayet atmaiva hi atmano bandhuhu atmaiva ripuratmanaha. So you can see a lot of Atmas there. So now in the verse, one should lift oneself by one's own self and not drag oneself down, because the self alone is the self's friend and the self alone is the self's enemy. So, first thing, the word Atma here, it means the mind. Not the spiritual self, it means the mind. So now, how does the mind, one should lift oneself by one's own self? Now, in order to lift anything, it has to be different from you. It's like this. No matter how strong a person is, and that person may be able to lift heavy weights, but that person cannot lift themselves. Because lifting, you can lift only an object. You can jump, but that's not lifting. You cannot, anyway. So, to lift something, it has to be different. So how can the mind lift itself? And the answer is, I think we discussed it in an earlier time we met. The mind itself is not a monolithic whole. Our mind already has divisions in it, and we have referred to it often. We speak about the conscious mind, the unconscious mind. Sometimes the words that get used are called the higher mind or a lower mind. And I had mentioned this before, that if you have, say, a fairly big lake, it's possible that the water in that lake is not uniformly clean. It's possible that someone might say, oh, I just live in this area and I find that the northern side of the lake, the water is pretty good. If you go to the southern side, oh, it just kind of not that great. So lake, the water is water. It's just water of the same lake. But it's possible, there is no compartment, there is no wall dividing the lake. But still, it's possible that some segment, some part of the lake may be cleaner than the others. That's a little bit how it is in our mind. Our mind is not uniform. At least a very small part of our mind is fairly clearer than the rest of the mind. And it is that clearer part of our mind which reflects the reality, reflects the light of God a little bit more clearly than the rest of the mind. And sometimes we speak about that clearer part of the mind as the voice of conscience. Or you see, sometimes, why do we have these inner tug of wars, inner dilemmas? Suppose you want to you are expected to do something, but you are longing to do something else. And then a part of your mind says, go for it. There is the other mind which says, no, you know what? That's not a good idea. Don't do it. And that's how then, again, in the course of a day, how often we are called upon to make these choices. And then again, which part of the mind do I listen to? Which part of the mind I don't listen to? And so that part of the mind which is clearer should lift up that other part of the mind which is less clear. That is what is meant by saying one should lift oneself by one's own self and not drag oneself down. It sometimes happens. If we don't listen to that voice of conscience, if you like, and get dragged down by, oh, this is what I want to do. I don't care if it's not good for me. This is just, I'm going to do it. And so then I'm kind of dragging myself down. Something that will bring me more pain, more suffering, more regret, more feelings of guilt. So that is what is meant by saying one should lift oneself by one's own self, not drag one's self down. And why is that? Because the self alone is the self's friend, and the self alone is the self's enemy. Now, all of us have friends in life. Some are like really close friends, some are acquaintances, different. There's also a gradation among the friends. Some are close and some are not so close. But the best friend we can potentially have is our own mind. Because no person in the world, not even our friends, no matter how close they are to us, they can't be with us all the time. And sometimes we might feel it's a good thing they are not with us all the time. But that's the reality. There is this very ancient verse which says, no matter how anyone is close to you, the most that they can accompany me is up to the cremation ground or to the burial ground. So there is a limit to how much other people can come with me. But the mind is always with me. The mind will never go away. Even if you want it to go away, it won't go away. And so if you have to live with the mind all the time, then it had better be a good friend. Otherwise, life will be a torture. There's enough torture, enough suffering coming from the world outside. But what if there is a source of suffering is our own mind? There's no escape. And so we should try to make our mind our best friend. And the idea is this clearer part of my mind, which maybe in some cases it may be just 1% of my mind. 99% is dragging me down, 1% is kind of somehow trying to hold it. Or 2%, 5%, I don't know how much, so there is no way to measure. But the goal is, eventually, just like water purification process, this lake of the mind, I want that clearer part remain clear. I don't want it to start getting sediments from the other side. But I should live in such a way, my thinking, my actions, everything should be done in such a way that that clearer part, if it's 5% now, it should be 7, 10, 15, 20. The more my mind becomes clearer and clearer, the easier one's spiritual path becomes. When the mind has become clear 100%, and it's possible, it will happen, then we are ready for samadhi. So we don't have to be too surprised, like, why isn't samadhi occurring yet? It'll happen. But first, a lot of work, this cleaning work has to be done. And so that is only when then can my mind can become truly my friend. Even the best friend that we have in the world today can potentially create attachment and kind of take me away from the truth. But making the mind as a friend, that's why mind is the best friend that we can have, if we can make the mind a friend. And what does a good friend do? What does a real friend do? A real friend will not, suppose you have done something stupid. Most people nowadays, they want to be politically correct, and nobody will just come and say, what a stupid person you are. Because they say, no, I don't want to offend anyone, and everyone will even very gently try to point out the mistake. But it's a true friend and who wants to help you, a true friend will call a spade a shovel if you want. Will say, yes, you are stupid, you shouldn't have done that. Even if you are angry, even if you blast, the friend will say, I don't care what you think, I don't care whether you hate me, but this is good for you. We want that, our mind to be that, to tell us when we do stupid things, when we make mistakes. But if our mind hasn't become that close a friend yet, then what that mind will do is just the opposite. It will actually could almost become our enemy. That's what the verse will say. That the mind will help me justify everything I do. Make me feel, that's, to some extent, that's the kind of a modern trend, that if somebody does a mistake, especially when they are very young in school, don't hurt their self-esteem. Try to say, you are great, you are awesome. This has some utility, but I think parents and teachers have to kind of figure out for themselves how much to shelter the growing children in the family from just the reality that sometimes we could do stupid things. Sometimes we are stupid. Sometimes we might fail. We can't be successful all the time. So to prepare children for the possibility of not being the best every time, of sometimes failing, or sometimes making a mistake, I think that's important. That's what a friend will do. But an enemy, if an enemy at least who I know as an enemy is safe. But an enemy who I think is my friend is even more dangerous. Because the person pretends to be my friend, even if I'm making some mistake, the person says, oh great, good job, keep on doing that. And it'll drag me down further and further. And that is why think about it this way. Even when we have enemies in the world, why do I even have enemies in the world? It's because my mind is my enemy. My mind is making me say, do, behave in such a way that I'm creating enemies in the world. So when my mind is my friend, it is easier to make friends outside. When my mind is the enemy, it is easier to alienate other people from ourselves. And that is the meaning of, because the self alone is the self's friend and the self alone is the self's enemy. We have a book of the teachings of Swami Brahmananda. The book is titled The Eternal Companion. And sometimes the question, Sometimes some people may have asked this question, who is our eternal companion? Now, I mean, if you take it very literally, then there is really no eternal companion. A companion, understanding companion as someone different from me, and if I am the only existence, then in a non-dual perspective, there is no eternal companion. But in a relative sense, one who has been with us life after life for a long time is really the mind. So in that sense, the mind is our eternal companion, because the only thing that survives death. Of course, if you are enlightened, then nothing survives. The Atman alone remains. If we don't realize God before dying, then the Atman, of course, is there, can never die, but the mind will still remain. Which is why in every life, every birth, we have a different body. We don't have a different mind. The mind that we have now is the mind that has been with us in every life. Not just in human life. Even if in some previous life we were an ant or a grasshopper or any of the species, it is the same mind that was there. It's almost like sometimes you download, you have an app, and sometimes app will have an in-app purchase. So there are certain features will be locked. And if you then pay extra, then those features are unlocked. So all of those features are there in the app that you have bought. They're just locked. And if you pay for it, then they become available to you. It's possible to think of the mind as this kind of an app with all the features available for all the species. So, but now if I'm born in a human body, the features for human body are unlocked. That's why I will not think like a bird. But if I were to be born in a bird's body, then the human features will be locked. The birds, I don't know what's really happening. But I mean, just think about it this way. A duckling. We never see a mother duck teaching the baby how to swim. The baby goes into the water and starts swimming. How did it learn? Who trained it? Who taught it? All that we can say is, at some point in these millions of births, the duck features were locked. Now in the duck body, they are unlocked. So no special training is necessary. In that way, yeah, that's one way to understand. I'm not saying this is definitively, it's like some big revelation or something. I'm just trying to understand how we can figure out how these things happen in life. So the self alone, the mind can be our friend, the mind can be our enemy. Verse 6. Bandhuratmatmanastasya tenatmaivatmana jitaha anatmanastu shatrutve bharte tatmaiva shatruvat. The self becomes a friend of oneself when the self is conquered by the self. But the unconquered self itself behaves adversely like an enemy. So again, lots of self. Everywhere, it's the mind. It's this clearer, higher mind and this kind of more muddy lower mind. So, a self becomes a friend of oneself. The mind can become my own friend when the self is conquered by the self, and that higher mind conquers the lower mind. By conquers is meant subdues it, means brings it under control, disciplines it. Becomes a friend. What does becoming a friend means? Eliminating a form of self-alienation. These divisions that occur in the mind between the conscious mind, the unconscious mind, the higher mind, the lower mind, all these divisions go away. Only when the mind becomes one integrated whole. What we want is an undivided personality. Sometimes the ways the system is set up, we perpetuate that disintegration within us. Sometimes people sometimes have a number of calendars. This is my work calendar, this is my home calendar, and then so on. And there is utility in dividing those things. These are my work emails, these are my personal emails. All this has utility, I grant that. But it also, in a very subtle way, creates these walls. I kind of are dividing my life. This is my family time, this is my work time, this is my this time. No matter how much systematized this might look, but this inner compartmentalization of our life is not a very good idea. Can we kind of bring all the segments of our life together, eliminate these divisions, that I am the core of me, the core being that I am, should be the same, irrespective of the place, the time, the people I'm with. Normally they say that depending on the distinct social groups we move in, there is a different persona, a different mask comes. So when we are at home, there is one mask. When we are at a workplace, clearly people are different responsibilities, so we have a different mask. Eventually, all masks have to come off. And if we can kind of hold on to our real identity, that I am the Atman, or I am a child of God, I am a devotee. And it's not as if that I am a spiritual seeker only when I am meditating, only when I am at the Vedanta center. Why should I not keep somewhere in my heart my identity as a spiritual seeker, even when I am engaged in supposedly most secular work? If I go to a mall, if I go shopping, I can do shopping as a spiritual seeker. I don't have to forget my spiritual identity. So that's how we kind of bring the whole thing together. So the self becomes a friend of oneself when the self is conquered by the self. Otherwise, the unconquered self, when these my mind, my senses, my life is not under my control, then the mind itself acts like an enemy. And that leads to kind of self-destructive thoughts, self-destructive actions. So yes, there's lots of wars and conflicts going on in the world outside, and that can be extremely troubling. But as spiritual seekers, not to ignore what is happening outside, but to be also aware of another war that's been kind of low-level war that's going on inside our heart. And if we can't bring peace in the war that is going on inside, the wars that are going on outside will not make sense. We can get upset by it, we can protest, we can shout, but we will never find a correct way to understand them unless and until this inner war is somehow taken care of. So what we need is a clarity of perception, and that should begin with the mind. And that is why, as much as we can, we must try to live in harmony with our environment. Even if everyone around us, the world itself, is going crazy, and then we say, what to do? The world is crazy, so I have no option. I have to be crazy also. No, I don't have to be. Even if everyone is losing their heads, can I keep my heads on the right place? Even if there is noise and destruction outside, it's difficult. Yes, we are continually getting influenced by events that are occurring outside of us. But the strength that is needed here is, in spite of that, it's not insulating myself, but protecting myself. Because only able to have some peace inside, then there is some chance that I might be able to bring some peace outside. If the world is disturbed, I am disturbed, everyone is disturbed, peace has no chance. If peace has to have some chance, we are not talking about bringing international peace. And it may, hopefully it will happen, but the very least, what we can do is peace, at least among the people we live with, in our own family, among our friends, with our neighbor. At least that, because external harmony, as much as it is humanly possible, is greatly beneficial for our spiritual practice. If there is too much chaos outside of us, and I'm affected by that chaos, then no chance. How can I then do japa? How can I do meditation? Because that chaos is going to percolate inside, and with that chaotic mind, I cannot meditate. And so we need to find a way to preserve at least some harmony in our heart to give our spiritual practice a chance. Verse 7. Chitatmanav prashantasya paramatma samahitaha shitoshna sukhadukkeshu tatha manapamanayoho. One who is self-controlled and tranquil remains immersed in the Supreme Self in cold or heat, pleasure or pain, and honor or dishonor. So self-controlled is what the earlier verse said, conquering the self. The mind, bringing the mind and the senses under our control. Such a person remains tranquil. Tranquil, the word in Sanskrit is prashanta, in deep peace. The Atman itself, described in the Mandukya Upanishad as Shantam, Shivam, Advaitam. So the word Shanta, the deep peace, refers to the Atman. So to the extent I'm able to hold that peace in my heart and that control on myself, only then is possible for me to remain immersed in the thought of God, immersed in my practice. In cold or heat, pleasure or pain, honor or dishonor. The Sanskrit says, Shitoshna Sukha Dukkeshu. Shita Ushna, cold and heat. Sukha Dukkha, pain and joy. Mana Apaman, in honor or dishonor. All these pairs of opposites will be there. The world is just polarized in every sort of way. Without being affected by them, can I just hold that peace in my heart with my mind and senses under control? Then it will be possible for me to meditate. Then it will be possible for me to do my spiritual practice. So we'll stop here today. If you have any thoughts, ideas, comments, questions. Yes.
An earnest spiritual seeker.
Yeah, all of them are earnest spiritual seekers. Muni, it's in Sanskrit, mananam, deep reflection. So person who deeply thinks about these things can be called a Muni.
Okay. Rishi has become mantra drashta.
Yes, one who is able to see subtle truths. Yeah.
Sannyasi has already renunciated desire except desire for God.
Yes. Very good.
Okay. Then self has to leave this self. So self one is mind and self two is Paramatma.
No. The self, both are mind.
Okay.
So this higher mind, the higher part of my mind is to lift up the lower part of the mind.
Okay. I'll write that. In this way, I can. Is it similar to what Duryodhana told to Sri Krishna? Why I cannot change to my goodness?
Yes, that is his mind becoming like an enemy. or trying to justify why he is not able to change his life. Yeah,
Thank
true.
you.
Very good. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Namaskar. I have a comment and a question. The comment is about what you said, and I certainly won't say it as elegantly as you did. But what I took away is that in order to improve, you first have to be honest with your own self. And that reminds me of two things. One is, in Alcoholics Anonymous, the first thing a person is supposed to do is stand up and say, I'm an alcoholic. Because if you don't accept, at least to yourself, that there's something that needs to be fixed, then the process can't even start. And that is where great friends come in very handy, because they are, whether it's your own mind or whether it's a good friend, they're the ones who will tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. There is one saying which I have heard, which I will just repeat. It's very short. It says, आईने और परछाइयों की तरह दोस्तों को रखो, क्योंकि आईना कभी झूठ नहीं बोलता और परछाइयाँ कभी साथ नहीं छोड़ती.
So translate that into English now.
So what that means is, keep your friends like mirrors and like your shadow, because a mirror will never lie to you and your shadow will never leave you. So that is actually the mark, the hallmark, the sort of yardstick for judging a good friend, because they will tell you, no, you are wrong, and you need to fix this. The question I had, Swamiji, sorry I'm taking so much time. You said that the mind is what goes through every single life. And I'm confused by that, because maybe my misunderstanding, but I think of the mind as where thoughts and knowledge and skills reside. And none of that translates from lifetime to lifetime. So I'm a little confused by how it's the same.
Yeah, please. So the knowledge, if you studied the Gita, you'll have to study the Gita again in next life. You can't say studied it last life. But if you have lived according to the teachings of the Gita, and then the samskar that these living like that has produced, that remains in next life. So the mind is a receptacle of all these subtle impressions. And that was make people different. Because if there's no continuity from one life to the next, why are people different? Even siblings in the same family, with same set of parents, when we go to same school, they are still very different. So what is it that creates difference? Because that mind that they have has brought a different set of impressions from their past.
So how about the conscious mind, which actually does not go from life to life, or knowledge or memories don't go? Is that a different
No, memories
part?
go. Please sit down. Yeah, memories do go. Okay. That's what yoga is about. Yoga say you can remember if you want. It's not particularly useful, but if one wants, they can get memory of their past life. So the mind is, see, death is the death of the physical body. The mind is very subtle. The mind doesn't die. And so, it's the brain that dies. But brain is a part of the body. And brain and mind are two different entities. Yeah.
Hari Om, Swamiji. Swamiji, we talk about, the Gita mentions that we need to make friends with the mind. I would have thought to make friends with the mind, you would get to know and acquaint ourselves with the mind. But then Krishna says that we should conquer the mind. So how can conquering the mind make it my friend?
The word conquering is not in the sense of just drop some bombs on it, not in that sense. Conquering really means bringing it under control. But that's the word in Sanskrit, jitatmanaha, Jayam. So there is that idea of conquest, but conquest not in a destructive sort of, not in a violent way. That's the idea. Yeah.
Namaskar, Swamiji. Swamiji, maybe it's just the day I'm in right now, but I feel like I don't want my mind to be my friend or my enemy. I just don't want my mind. I just want to trash it in the dustbin, and I'm really tired of it. I don't want to.
It's easy. Just realize God. And it goes. It's simple. The body, nature will take care of it. Sooner or later, the body will die. The mind doesn't die so easily. There is one book called Jivan Mukti Viveka. In that, there is one whole chapter titled Manonasha. Because ultimately, we don't speak of it that way, but in some sense, the goal is to destroy the mind. The mind is not easily destroyed. The body is very vulnerable. There's COVID or a bomb or an earthquake or tsunami, the body just goes. It's very fragile. The mind is very persistent. And the only way the mind can go, because mind is a product of ignorance. And ignorance can only go through knowledge. And so it's only God's grace or the Brahmajnana that will disappear the mind. So strive for that. Yeah. Yes.
Namaskar, Swamiji. My question is simple. So today we talked about clear mind, going deep, Atman, deep self, conscious, subconscious. And there's another word that has come a lot in my teachings, or what I hear a lot, that is soul.
Really?
Soul.
Soul, yeah. Okay.
And what I'm confused is, how is soul different from all this? To me, it all looks like, okay, they all probably come from deeper self, and it's the same, but I'm sure there is a difference. I don't know if you can.
Yeah. Okay.
explain
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Please sit down. Yeah. The word soul is tricky because the word comes very often even in Judeo-Christian thought. And so the word soul can get used in so many different ways. Just like the word Atma can sometimes mean the body, sometimes mean the mind, and so on. So that's why I generally avoid using the word soul, because it just creates another complication. So I just generally just limit myself to body, the visible, tangible part of my personality, the mind, the subtler part of my personality, which includes the intellect, the memories, thoughts, emotions, feelings, and all of that. And both these are material. The non-material part of my personality, I simply say the Atman, or the real self. Now, sometimes, again, translation has this tricky thing that we are translating Sanskrit into English words, and some of these words already have a pre-existing baggage connected with that. So yeah, in some texts, they kind of do use the word soul to refer to the Atman. Sometimes they use the word soul to refer to the Jiva. It gets a little muddier. And so it doesn't matter, but so long as you know in what sense the word is being used, you're okay. But there isn't any one dictionary meaning to the word soul. It can vary from context and from a tradition to tradition. Yeah. Any other thought? Yes. Yeah.
Swamiji, if I am not my thoughts, who is observing my thoughts?
Well, I'm observing my thoughts.
Who is this I?
The ego, the self. Because I'm a conscious being, so the consciousness of the Atman, which is percolating through the body and mind, and So the mind itself is the subject, is the instrument through which thoughts are observed, the world is observed, and the thoughts are also arising in the mind. So both are happening inside the mind. Yeah, good. That's a good question, because again, the activity is occurring in the mind. The perceiver is the Atman, but the Atman doesn't do anything. So the Atman is acting through the instrumentality of the mind and looking at the thoughts in the mind. So again, there is a kind of a subtle division there. Yeah. Yeah.
I have an example and a question. My example is from a TV show I watched growing up. It's kind of silly, but in that TV show, there's a character who is having like an internal battle within himself, and it manifests as like an illness. And then his uncle says to him, "You have to look within yourself to save yourself from your other self. Only then will your true self reveal itself."
Wow, that's Gita in action. Oh, wonderful! That's good.
But my question
That's
is
how some of these ancient teachings might seep through in popular media. Oh, very good. Yeah.
my question is that how like you talked about like the mind being fragmented and like the mind becoming your friend, meaning that all these like fragmented portions of the mind like become aligned or become combined. Like what are practices that we do, or like how do we integrate the like fragmented portions of the mind?
Yeah, I mean, everything really starts with living an honest life, truthful life, living according to dharma, following certain principles and values. So a moral, ethical life is always a foundation before we can look deep within. And then, of course, with this prayer, worship, meditation, we'll all bring all these scattered pieces back together again. But even for prayer, worship, meditation to be effective, it has to stand on the foundation of a strong dharmic life. Yeah, so that's the way to begin. Yeah. Okay, so we will stop here today, and next week we'll resume on verse number 8. Om Jananim Saratam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhur Muhu.